My name is Avon Bella, and I was 28 years old when a lifelong neighbor broke the news of my grandmother's passing because my own parents didn't think I deserved to know. A decade earlier, my mother and father had placed two suitcases on the front porch, just 2 weeks after my 18th birthday, and altered the locks while I was left standing there with only a backpack. Now, they occupied the front pew at Nana's funeral, my mother clutching my hand like we'd shared every moment since, murmuring about how we needed to discuss the inheritance as a family. They had returned with their sights set on money, but what awaited them was a scene where my grandmother's final instructions could still speak volumes, and when the judge read that certain portion aloud, no one in my family, least of all me, saw it coming. Welcome back to Zarabell Stories, where family secrets unravel and soft-spoken individuals finally find their voice. If you've ever felt like you were forever in debt to your family, this narrative is for you. Drop a comment below and let me know where you're joining us from, and don't forget to subscribe. I was in the middle of a shift when the call came. Working as a hospice nurse, that Tuesday in March found me sitting with a patient in the quiet hours before dawn, offering comfort, when my phone vibrated in my pocket. Stepping into the hallway, I heard Ruth Delgado's voice, my grandmother's neighbor of 30 years, choked with emotion. Marlene Woods had passed away in her sleep, peacefully, in the home she loved, the only way she would have accepted. Then Ruth shared a detail that sent a chill through me. My parents had been informed since early morning, yet they had waited all day, letting me learn from a neighbor after 9 hours had passed. My grandmother had been gone for that long, and the two people who claimed to be her family had deliberately kept me in the dark. I drove the 20 minutes to Maple Glen, my hand steady, as hospice work teaches you to postpone your emotions for later. Her porch light was glowing, its familiar evening ritual, marking a world that felt unchanged. On the front door, an index card in my mother's precise handwriting announced that the contents had been inventoried and nothing was to be removed. The house had been cataloged before she'd been gone a full day. I stood on that porch for a long while, the weight of memories pressing in, recalling another time I had stood there with my own bags. To understand, you need to know the home I grew up in. In my mother's kitchen, instead of artwork or photos, there was an invoice taped to the refrigerator, itemized in ink, documenting what I owed for room and board. My mother, a loan officer, ran our household with the precision of her desk, where every kindness came with a tally. My father remained a silent figure, offering small apologetic shrugs that suggested the system was beyond his control. Then there was Nana's kitchen, a world away, where Saturday mornings meant pancakes and the promise that I owed nothing, where the measure of family wasn't a debt, but a welcome. I spent my childhood crossing between these two different realms, wondering why love was a transaction in one place and a gift in the other. In one home, I was a daughter. In the other, I was an obligation. In 2014, when I was 17, Nana had a minor stroke, impacting her speech and movement. I drove her to therapy sessions, witnessing my parents' response firsthand. My mother arrived at the hospital with a folder containing brochures for a care facility and an appraisal for Nana's house, already planning to manage her future. She used the word manage, as if it were a mandate. Nana refused, but my parents didn't stop planning. I overheard them discussing legal terms like guardianship and power of attorney. They weren't planning to help her recover. They were planning to take control. And they filed the paperwork to do so. What they didn't anticipate was the process. In Ohio, a court investigator visits the individual. This investigator watched Nana handle her daily affairs and spoke with me. I told the truth, that she was sharp, capable, and that she needed no managing. Her own doctor supported this in writing. My parents' petition was rejected. My mother didn't explode. Instead, she offered a quiet, chilling promise about learning the cost of loyalty. 2 months later, on my 18th birthday, I came home to find my key no longer worked. 2 suitcases and my backpack sat on the porch, a neat eviction. My mother informed me through the door that I had made my choice and was in the red with the family ledger. My father's silhouette lingered in the background, unmoving. I was left to calculate my next move, picking up my belongings and walking 6 streets to Nana's house. She opened her door, asked no questions, and simply turned on the porch light. Love, she said, doesn't keep books. It keeps a light on. And from that night on, that light burned each evening to guide me home. The next 10 years were a slow but steady climb. I lived with Nana, then on my own, working and attending nursing school. I was proud of what I built, but it wasn't without its struggles. At 19, after months of silence from my parents, I hit a breaking point. I drove myself to a hospital and checked myself in for a 72-hour stay, a time of my life I chose to keep completely private. I left with a self-imposed rule: need nothing, own nothing. It felt like a survival strategy for years. Those years also brought Sunday mornings in Nana's kitchen, a steady routine of quiet joy. Then, when I was 28, Nana began making unexplained trips to see a lawyer. She was diagnosed with end-stage heart failure and chose to spend her remaining time at home. The hospice agency I worked for cared for her, but by design, I was not her nurse. I remained her granddaughter, sharing in her final days. She told me, one night, that when they came, I should let her lawyers speak first. I promised. 3 weeks later, she was gone, and I was reading a note on her door left by my parents. They orchestrated the funeral like a public event. My mother performed grief with practiced ease, and my father worked the room, accepting condolences. They had been absent for a decade, but were now present for the estate. When my mother took my arm at the casket to discuss the inheritance, I held my silence, remembering my promise. Soon after, a letter arrived summoning all parties to the reading of Nana's will. My parents proposed we all walk in together. I drove myself. At the lawyer's office, the terms were read. The house, a commercial building, and investment accounts totaling $3.5 million, all left to me. My parents received $10,000 each, with a note of thanks for the lesson they had taught her in 2014. The room fell silent. My mother didn't react with anger, but with a sweet veneer, suggesting they would manage this responsibility for me. I declined, and her persistent smile was more unsettling than any outburst. The first wave of my mother's strategy was a show of reconciliation. She invited me to dinner, promising no estate talk. I accepted, knowing fully what she was, yet that old hunger for her approval was undeniable. The evening was pleasant, but after dessert, she produced a binder outlining a family plan to manage my inheritance through an LLC controlled by them. I thanked her for the meal and refused. Her expression shifted, and her words turned sharp. The next move was legal. I was served with a lawsuit contesting my grandmother's will, claiming undue influence by a caregiver and a lack of testamentary capacity. They wanted the trust invalidated and the estate redistributed as if no will existed, with them in temporary control. A smear campaign followed, with family members and townspeople hearing a twisted version of events. My cousin, who I had been close with, texted me to suggest I share the money, and then blocked me. During this time, at my lawyer's suggestion, I moved into Nana's house to secure it. My parents' lawyer objected. The first night there, I discovered the source of the porch light, a simple timer set to turn on each evening. She hadn't been flipping a switch. She had built a promise into the house itself. That night, I let a neighbor in to console me, a first for me. My lawyer, Harriet, then revealed the extent of Nana's planning. The trust was created in 2015, just months after I was turned out, and it was amended multiple times. In early 2024, before any diagnosis, Nana had herself examined by 2 doctors who certified her mental capacity. She had built a fortress of paperwork anticipating this very challenge. There was one final page, Harriet said, that was sealed to be read only by the judge at the hearing. During a deposition, my parents' lawyer questioned my routines with Nana, attempting to frame love as manipulation. He then revealed my confidential hospital stay from a decade ago, which my parents had kept as ammunition. A complaint was later filed with the nursing board, forcing my suspension from work while an investigation proceeded. I had to rely on my savings, which were fast disappearing. My parents' lawyer then offered a settlement, a peace offering that was also a threat. Pay them, and the board complaint would vanish. I was at a low point considering the deal. That night, a neighbor, Ruth, arrived and reminded me of the porch light. She told me the promise had to be a choice, and it had to cost something to be meaningful. She asked me what the interest rate was on a lifetime of paying for their love. I tore up the settlement offer. I realized their power came from my silence, from the shame I carried. A secret can be held hostage, a story cannot. I decided I would tell my story, all of it, on the stand, openly and without shame. I signed a waiver to release my own mental health records voluntarily, defusing my parents' plan to use them against me. The evidentiary hearing arrived. My parents were represented by a skilled attorney who painted me as a calculated professional who had manipulated a vulnerable elder. My mother testified, projecting a devastated, reasonable persona. My cousin spoke as well. The next day, I took the stand. I recounted the night of my 18th birthday, the suitcases, my father's shadow, my mother's words about me being in the red. I talked about my hospital stay, transforming it from a weapon into a testament of survival. I made it clear that my grandmother's plan predated her illness, and that she had acted to protect herself from them. Then came my witnesses, Nana's doctor of 20 years, the hospice nurse who cared for her, and a group of loyal neighbors. One neighbor, Ruth, testified about the porch light, explaining to the court that the promise was always for me. It was her testimony that broke the courtroom's solemnity and caused my mother's composure to crack. During the proceedings, my mother herself inadvertently revealed the family's core belief, that family is a ledger and I was in debt. The judge rendered her ruling. The petition to invalidate the trust was denied with prejudice. The court found no evidence of undue influence and abundant evidence that the plan was a response to my parents' own actions. Their conditional bequests were forfeit, meaning they received nothing, while also owing their own legal fees. My mother approached me afterward, not with an apology, but with a final statement about what they had given me. I told her we were settled and walked away. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like relief. The story was published in the local paper, and I paid the price of public exposure, but it was a price I chose to pay. The nursing board closed the complaint, and I was reinstated. I turned the rental income from Nana's building into a fund that provides respite care for family caregivers. It pays for relief without any expectation of repayment. Months later, a check arrived from my father, refunding the room and board they had charged me. It was accompanied by a note of apology. I added it to the fund, knowing its true value was the rest it could provide to others. Later, I met a young nursing student who had been turned out by her own family. I offered her a place to stay for just $1 a year, no obligations. I handed over a key, a simple act that felt like the true inheritance passing on to the right person. Tonight, I see her at the green table, studying, a new cycle of belonging beginning. At 7 o'clock, the timer clicks, and the porch light comes on. This is what I know. Love doesn't keep books, it keeps a light on. And that light can outlive the hand that turned it on. That is my story, suitcases, a judge, a light on a porch. If your family has turned love into a ledger, remember, you don't owe them your peace, and you are allowed to stop making payments on it. If you're going through a hard time, please share this with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment with your thoughts, hit like, and be sure to subscribe to Zarabell Stories for more stories that speak to the heart.